Welcome to Unfiltered Bantaba podcast. It's another amazing episode with a beautiful guest, an amazing talent that will be joining us today to talk about issues on multi-art and Afrocentric. But before that, the Bantaba or the Unfiltered podcast is a bilingual English and German TV, radio, and online podcast that actually features individuals, groups, organizations, and talents worldwide. With a special focus on Berlin and Germany, the podcast serves as an open platform, promote and spread stories, talents, projects around the world to bring different voices and stories in the spotlight. Today, one of the talent or stories that we will be featuring on is a Texas-born U.S. now based in Berlin, Germany, Savanna Morgan. Today, we will be talking about multidisciplinary art and Afrocentric. She is my guest. Savanna is also a writer, an artist, a poetess from Texas, as I said. Welcome to Unfiltered Podcast, Savanna. It's amazing having you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to have been invited.
I'm really grateful as well. How have you been doing?
Obviously, it's a lot going on in the world. The frequencies, the vibrations have been a bit off, but I'm coping. I'm doing what I can to play my part and contribute to peace, at least within my own orbit, and just harvesting all of my emotions and trying to turn it into something creative and beautiful.
Creative in a sense of multidisciplinary, because I mean,
Yes.
we say a jack of all trade when it comes to art. Like you do or know something from everything in the multidisciplinary of art, right?
I don't know if I could say everything, but I am a writer. I write different types of literature, poetry, plays. I've also written essays.
Yeah.
I work as a part of Archive Ensemble, which is a feminist collective and art publisher. So I also do some research and scholarly writing. I'm also a musician and an actress. I trained in the theater. So one thing has
You're also
kind
a
of always-
poetess.
Yes.
That's why I said you are something, you do or know something of, and do something of something from all the multidisciplinary art. Like this is the beauty of being a jack of all trade, but of course with something with a focus, special. And this is really special, right? You know, when I hear you sing, I'm like, wow, just continue singing, right?
Thank you so
when
much.
I hear you read your poems, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Thank you.
Right? And I read about what you wrote. I'm like, okay, this is what we're talking about. And I think this is really beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like each medium, whether it be poetry, music, acting, they all kind of flow into each other. I try to keep, one singular artistic vessel within me, like this place within me, which I can use to express myself through different mediums. But I think all different mediums come from the same core, at least for me.
Exactly. How has it been arriving in Berlin? I mean, you're from US, the United States. I mean, we say America is America, right? And then all of a sudden in Berlin since 2020. How is it like arriving in Berlin, trying to get into the art sector? How is it like? How has it been like?
It's been a journey. It's been a roller coaster. It's been a lot of ups and downs. I moved here from Chicago. I got my bachelor's in theater and I came straight here to get my master's in performance studies, devised theater and performance studies, which basically means collaborative performance making. I studied at Art House Berlin. And what really drew me to Berlin was the multidisciplinary nature of performance here. I think throughout German performance and European performance histories, there's this huge emphasis on I think it's called Gesamtkunstwerk, where all the different art forms are working together. And that really interested me as an undergrad when I was studying theater. And I got to visit Berlin and doing a summer abroad and see a bunch of performances, and I was like, okay, this seems like a type of place where I can be a jack of all trades and not really have to choose one particular title as an artist. And I really love the Berlin creative community for being so open to different modes of, different interpretations of art.
Yeah.
Coming from the U.S., obviously there's like a lot of cultural shocks, however, especially as a dark-skinned, plus-size Black woman. The way my body is viewed and perceived on stage and off stage is different in this context in Europe. Okay. And it's something that I've been having to adjust to since finishing my studies and kind of like deciding to go on and work here as a freelance artist. There are definitely a lot of hard pills to swallow, but I think I see both sides of my environment and my circumstances here.
Are you saying like Europe or Berlin is actually more tolerant in terms of diversity and inclusion?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean, like you just mentioned, like in the sector, performing on and off stage, how people view you, your skin color, and of course, being a plus-size Black woman compared to the U.S.
Yeah, compared to the U.S., I would say obviously the U.S. has a lot of systemic issues, but there is a lot of dialogue around social issues that I think sometimes can be lacking here in Germany, and that's in Berlin particularly, and that's one of the major drawbacks of existing here in my particular body is kind of the sweeping under the rug of a lot of issues that happens here in Germany. Okay. That's one of the major drawbacks, but me being an artist, of course, it's my job to kind of shed light on these things. I feel like that's my purpose as a human in the work that I do. So I see this particular environment as a challenge to play my part in making the world a better place via my creative expression, you know?
Yeah, interesting. We're talking about multidisciplinary art and Afrocentric, right? Of course, you just talked about your work in the area of multidisciplinary art, and now we talk about Afrocentric. Now, of course, we all know about Afro and all that, but then this word Afrocentric might be a bit tricky to understand to some people. So it would be good to tell us, like, what your work entails around this Afrocentric, and why do you think you have to focus on Afrocentric as well?
Yeah, my work particularly is I make work about Black people and for Black people across the whole diaspora. Of course, people of all backgrounds are welcome to my shows in the audience, but I'm not really addressing them in my work. My work is directly addressed to the Black diaspora, centering our triumphs, our joys, our healing, our histories, Pan-Africanism as like an economic and political model, understanding that Blackness is incredibly diverse, Africanness and in just the diasporic identity is so widespread and global and diverse, and celebrating that diversity and understanding that we can be united and support each other's interests despite all the cultural differences that exist amongst us, rather we be in the U.S., in South America, in the Caribbean islands, on the continent of Africa, here in Europe. My goal is to help us to see our own beauty, hold up a mirror, really, and just be a reflection of all the light and the spectrum of colors and radiance that exist within our beautiful race.
Our beautiful race. And how does the Afrocentric spaces looks like? Like, are our beautiful race actually supporting what you do?
In Berlin specifically, or in general?
In general. Oh, right now you're in Berlin, right?
Yeah. I could say in Berlin, there are there's like, in my experience, there's a huge stratification or separation in Afrocentric spaces.
Yeah.
Because Black identity is so diverse in this city, people come from all different backgrounds. And of course it's like that in the US, but majority of the Black people in the US are African American, like by ethnicity or identify as Black American. And we have, you know, a shared history, having had the same transatlantic enslaved migration coming to the US. I think here, people come from all different backgrounds, so everyone has different Black groups have different interests and goals for their particular communities. So, and I think there's two sides to that, because in a lot of ways I've been able to like expand my own ideas about my Blackness and my identity by being around so many different ideas about Black identity and African identity here in Berlin, being exposed to perspectives that weren't necessarily as accessible in the U.S. Here in Berlin. But I will say there is a lot of there are so many different corners in I guess you could say like tiers and stratifications of Blackness and Black art in Berlin. You have your underground scene, you have your and your more mainstream stages and your mainstream acts, and then within these two, I guess you can call them hierarchies. You have different many hierarchies and stratifications within that. So, yeah, it's just a completely different context because. Culturally, Europe and Germany specifically has a completely different history of Black bodies existing and creating art here. I'm not gonna say like one is better than the other, but it's definitely different.
How would you compare, in comparison, whereas in Germany, I mean, in the area of your work, multidisciplinary art and, of course, Afrocentric. So if we look at Afrocentric, from my own perspective, I would say US is more diverse because I would say we have more Black people in the US than in Germany.
Absolutely.
Right.
So yeah, there are Black people everywhere.
Everywhere, but I mean in comparison, of course, in statistics.
In the US, I mean, Black people everywhere in the US.
That's what I'm saying.
Whereas you can go like miles and miles, kilometers and kilometers
it's just Black,
and not see one Black face in Germany as opposed to the US.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, because of slavery, colonialism, and so on, that brought all of this. But then I was wondering, so if you were to compare in terms of dominance, in terms of advantages, and so on, how would you rate Germany in comparison to the US?
Well, I definitely want to take into consideration my American privilege as well as a Black person. I think that racism functions differently in Europe than it does in the States. So specifically around like when it comes to issues of migration and like geopolitics, like where specifically each Black body comes from, there are certain privileges as African American. So I want to speak specifically. I only feel comfortable speaking particularly about my own unique experience here, being that there is such a there is like that extraism for Black migrants from Africa, Black migrants who are not from Europe or the U.S. basically, and not westernized. Yeah. I think that's a really important distinction to make, because just within like the first few months or within the first year of living here, I realized, I have to take into consideration that like people may perceive me differently whenever I open my mouth, and all the respectability politics that comes that come with that here.
Yeah. So I mean, that's exactly what I am talking about. Like, of course, having certain identity comes with a lot of challenges, right? And you talked about like my American privilege, and for us, it's I don't know. I haven't seen anyone saying my German privilege. Right, because it's like an issue of belonging as well. So you don't have that privilege, even though if you officially belong, but in reality, it's still not there. So
German privilege exists in Germany, doesn't it, though?
For Germans?
Yeah, for people who have I would say in general in the West, being cast as a Westerner based on what passport you have comes with certain privileges.
Yeah.
And I have experienced it several times where people's whole demeanor and attitude towards me will change just based off of them knowing where my origins come from. It's crazy. It's sick and it's sad.
Yeah.
And I don't support this, but this is something that I continuously having to work through as a Black body making art here in Berlin, because and as someone who is a Pan-Africanist, understanding how within the Black community within the African diaspora there are also certain privileges, and how we can use our privileges regardless of what those are to uplift our brothers and sisters in different circumstances.
Speaking of our Black Afro-diaspora communities and uplifting our brothers and sisters, how do you find your community? How do you find your space between them? I mean, how do you get to connect to them, to know about your work? Because, of course, you came to Berlin a few years ago. It's not like in the US where you were born and grew up, right? So here trying to find your space, trying to get your audience, and all that, getting in the space and being known. How has that been for you? Are you there?
I definitely feel it's taken me some time to feel a sense of solid community. Really over the past year, I feel like I've started to feel more grounded here in Berlin, feeling like I have people to hold me up. But it does take time. It doesn't just happen immediately when you get here. Yeah. I think I definitely have to be super intentional about the spaces that I enter, because of the body that I live in, and it's not something that can happen if you're passive about it. I feel like as a Black person in Berlin, you have to be really active and intentional about the spaces you put yourself in, so that you can grow the community that you desire.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if I understand, you actually fit in or comfortable in the Black community, even though you're doing a multidisciplinary art, right?
I will say I found my people who I feel I could share my vulnerability and my art with, but I don't think like I was saying, there is so many different stratifications in the Black community here. So to say that I feel like complete harmony with the whole of the Black Berlin community is I don't even have access to the whole. There are certain aspects of Black identity and Black experience that I might not have access to, because Blackness in Berlin is so multicultural and multifaceted, But I definitely keep a diverse. I try to keep a diverse range of Black perspectives around me. Okay. My friends in Berlin come from the continent. They come from the U.S. Some of them were born and raised here, some first, second, third generation Black Europeans, Black Germans. And I think it's really just been the universe, honestly, and all of the divine, which has brought the right people into my orbit, I feel like.
That's nice, finding your own orbit and trying to make sure that things are happening. Tell me, this is interesting. So many people who are new, of course, you're Western, right? It's not like coming from a third world country, right? But how was it like? Do you have any culture shock when you arrive in Berlin?
Absolutely.
Tell us one or two examples.
The Germans are very blunt and honest people. And American society is a little bit different. Okay. Especially in the South. I don't know I'm from Dallas, I'm from Texas, and I have family in Louisiana, South Carolina, just spread out across the southern U.S. And I don't know if you've heard of this concept of Southern hospitality or Southern pleasantness, but the culture where I'm from is that you very much being what's the word? Being using a lot of like euphemisms and being you know, soft with people. Yeah. Not saying that the Germans are the opposite of that, but I will say there's a lot like I feel like culturally people really carry their emotions on the outside as opposed to a more layered interactions with people, if that makes sense. Okay. So that's one cultural shock. I would say, obviously, another culture shock is like the lack of, like, not having as many people who look like me around, because I grew up in a majority Black neighborhood in Dallas, and I coming from Chicago, which is also like, or the Midwest, like the school I went to was like an hour east of Chicago, but coming from like urban areas that are also like extremely diverse. It was hard coming here and not seeing as many people who look like me, honestly. So that's the other thing. Also, like, what else? This is a third thing. Okay. The food. Yes, the food is completely different. But I will say, I love German bread. Okay. Germans really, like, y'all really know what y'all doing when it comes to flour. Like,
and potato, right? And potato.
And potatoes. Yes, I do have to carry around a bottle of hot sauce with me. That's a Texas thing in general. But whenever I'm here, I'm like, keep the spice in my pocket because it's not as prevalent. Yes.
I think most of the Africans do that as well, you know? If you check my bag, you will see spices and limes. Yes.
And which one you like? What's your favorite brand? I use a long, thin bottle of red hot sauce called Louisiana hot sauce.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Usually we will make it on our own with different spices.
Yeah. Okay. The homemade. I got to try that.
Homemade, yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure you've eaten our food. It's always spicy.
Oh, yes. I've been to the Bantaba restaurant, actually. I was thinking about going there today. Yeah. I've been to the Senegambia restaurant. Yeah. Love the spices they use.
Yeah. So we really eat spices. So most of us are carrying along when we're going to certain places. Yeah. But it's interesting you said, like, one of the culture shocks that you had was walking around not seeing people that looks like you, Black. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's Berlin, right? Have you been to the South?
I haven't been to... Wait, yes, I have. I've been to Constance. I've been by Bodensee, like on the border of Switzerland.
Yeah. I mean, around Stuttgart, Karlsruhe, Freiburg, then you'll see a lot of Black people.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I gotta go visit. I mean, anybody in Stuttgart, hit me up, please.
We'll go there.
I need to go.
That's actually interesting. So what are the challenges that you face along, you know, trying to, like I said, trying to get to the space in general? It's obviously not easy. Like you said, it has been a roller coaster. And I was wondering, what are some of the challenges that you actually face along?
Living here?
In general, as a, can I say as a foreigner or as a non-German?
Yeah, the language barrier has been not easy. Yes.
What's your level now?
I would say B1. Okay. B1 transferring into B2. Okay. Like, I can understand and read in German, but formulating sentences, wann ich etwas auf Deutsch sagen willst, viele Worte kommt in Kopf, aber ich kann nicht alles zusammenführen. You know what I mean? Putting all of the words in one sentence is the hard part. Okay. It's like you got, like, having the vocab, but like learning the grammar, it's like a whole thing. Yes, but I'm getting there slowly. Yeah. So the language barrier. Okay. Also, the cold, because where I'm from is real warm. Yeah, I'm from Texas. It's like right on the border of Mexico. Okay. Yeah, it's very south. It's like south. Okay. So we don't really have long, dark, cold winters. I did get to experience that living in the Midwest, like in the north. Yeah. But still, that Berlin sun going down at 3:30 p.m. It's like middle of December, January.
Yeah, December, January is from 3, 4. It's really crazy, right?
It's wild.
Amazing. Yeah. We talked about, like, you being a jack of all trade in the multidisciplinary art, but of course, master of something. That is all the art that you do and being that Afrocentric. And what of your multi-talent is actually writing, singing, you know, and doing poetry as well. First, let's talk about the songs that you do. What's your genre? What type of songs or music do you do?
Yeah, so along with the list of things you just, the titles you attributed to me, I also consider myself a cultural preservationist via the music that I choose to rearrange and which inspires me. For example, the song that I sung earlier, Motherless Child, it was created during the slave era. It was a work song.
The Motherless Child, we will talk about this after your performance because you're going to perform for us and then we'll talk about the song.
Yes.
But I just want to understand your rhythm or your genre of music, where does it comes from, why?
So traditional Black American music, I would say, in all of the genres that encompasses, the blues, gospel, jazz, rock and roll, pretty much the entire American music landscape was created by Black people, but that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the original foundation of Black American music is what I get most of my inspiration from, and the artists that inspire me are people like Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, neo-soul artists like Erykah Badu, Jill Scott, experimental jazz, Angel Bat, David, the early blues women, Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey. Just a lot of really strong women who have used music throughout our history as Black Americans to be that reflection that I was talking about earlier of all of our beauty and grace.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You talk about American traditional music, right? So mostly if you talk about American music, what comes to our mind is hip-hop, R&B, blues, electric, or maybe jazz as well. You don't really think of traditional American music. So this is why I was wondering, like, who are your audience? Like, is it also in the Afrocentric spaces?
Absolutely.
Of course, yes. Right. Okay, and how are the people, let's say now in Berlin, how are the people, how's the response?
I think the Black people in Berlin are really like appreciative and like eager to learn more about the diversity of Black American music, which is cool because there's a very like, obviously, Black American culture is increasingly, especially over the past like decade, been fetishized, sensationalized, profited from, appropriated, completely misrepresented by a lot of people who are not Black Americans. So I think like understanding the roots of where the culture comes from, like hip hop didn't just come out of nowhere. Neo soul, R&B, house music didn't just come out of nowhere. Like we have been laying a cultural foundation for centuries that cannot be dismissed, cannot be forgotten, cannot be ignored. That's why songs like Motherless Child, which I sing later in the program, that song was written 300 years ago. That song was to say it was written is a very like Western way of looking at how African American music, traditional African American music is created. But it was co-created as a work song, which work songs is some of the first forms of Black American music, which began as screams and hollers from plantations of Black people, enslaved Black people being forced to work, and the music that came out of their work. So songs like Motherless Child, songs like Strange Fruit, ballads and rhythms that have been produced, reproduced, copied throughout history by different cultural groups, basically understanding like the root of that and understanding the historical context for all of it. That we as Black Americans have gone through particular struggles and triumphs, and had to go through certain types of healing in order for that music to exist in the first place.
Going through certain type of healing, I mean, at some point it's grief, right? And then this is one of your songs that you're going to be performing for us, that is The Motherless Child. We'll go with a live performance about the song, Motherless Child. And when we come back, then we will talk about what the song is about, grief. I think it's really amazing, right? So we just take 2 to 3 minutes break, and Savanna will do an amazing live performance for us about the song. And when we come back, the discussion continues. Motherless Child. That's actually about grief. Like I said, I saw you performing your voice and I'm like, oh my God, don't stop. Tell us about this song. Where is it motivated from? How does it all come about? Why Motherless Child?
So I chose to create an original jazz rendition of this song, which has been recorded maybe 100 times, like throughout the last century. Like I was saying, it began as a work song. It's a song that that encompasses the grief that is being constantly forced to move, travel, be uprooted, and leave your home for a new place, which is a journey that Black Americans have gone through from the time of the transatlantic slave trade until now, constantly being displaced, even in the modern times, via systems like gentrification, redlining, which exist as a way of basically trying to concentrate and control like Black mobility and Black power in the U.S. Via like voting laws and voting registration. But yeah, getting back to the point. Yeah, basically the song is about constantly being uprooted. And the song really resonates with me right now, and it has like over the past years since basically crossing an ocean and coming to a new land that's foreign to me, and sometimes kind of being disillusioned, like, okay, what am I here? Where am I going? What is my purpose here? So I just decided to create an arrangement of that song, honoring this experience and not trying to dismiss my own grief and healing that I've gone through here.
Yeah.
The song was originally arranged in like 1899, though, like put on paper by a man named William Gordon. William E. Gordon was the first person to like actually compose the song on paper. Okay. But it's been sung for hundreds of years, like in a traditional sense. Okay. For rituals, ceremonies, different cultural events that, you know, we as Black Americans are keeping alive, in which have been originated hundreds of years ago.
Interesting. Again, on all the multidisciplinary art talent that you have, music and authors, again, include like writing poems and essays and so on. So I wanted to know, interestingly, let's say, not to talk about the poet, because we will talk about that. Aside poetry, what types of articles, or I don't know, what types of area do you focus on in writing?
Yeah, so a lot of people would describe my writing as experimental. Okay. I actually think the title of poet is something that was projected onto me. People called me a poet, and I kind of just went with it, but I never really saw myself as a poet. Interesting. I just saw myself as like just a writer, you know? But I was like, okay, maybe this is poetry, especially with the book out now. People are calling it poetry. Wait, I lost track of the question.
I mean, what do you focus on your types of writing? Where is it published? Let's not talk about the poetry. We'll come to that.
The types of things I focus on in my poetry is my own personal experience.
I mean, we'll talk about that. I mean, you also write essays and articles and other stuffs, right? What's your area of interest in the side? The poetry, of course, we will talk about this in the book. But first, I want to understand, aside poetry, what else do you write about? And where are they published?
I write a lot about my personal experiences as a Black woman, documenting my journey as an artist. I love learning about other people's experiences as well, and writing about them, or in tribute to them, or in honor of them. I would say the themes that my work intersects on is, you know, Black womanhood, memory and home, and Pan-Africanism. These three topics, like being what's like at the core of most of my work, whether it be essays, poetry, plays for live performance.
That's amazing. You know, Berlin, of course, you said has been like a roller coaster, but I believe in every dark moment there is light. And so despite the challenges, there are some advantages that you have. And along the road, the result is this and that for now. But let's say this. So this is more of like a future partnership, but this is something we would definitely dive deep and see. Cow Trip, right? This was published last year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's interesting. First, like, if you look at the four, you said Cow Trip dedicated to Elizabeth.
Yes, Elizabeth, my father's mother.
Why? Your grandmother?
Yes.
Why do you dedicate it's a poetry book, right?
Yes. Yeah. So cow tripe was my grandmother's favorite food. It's a Southern delicacy.
So cow tripe is actually a dish?
It's a dish. Yes.
You know, I've been like, cow tripe, okay. Yeah, okay, and you even have a page on it, like how to prepare cow tripe.
Yes.
But then, it doesn't really look like cooking.
Yeah, it's not. It's
quite interesting. It's a poem, right? Yeah.
It's basically a dedication. The first poem and the whole book is in dedication to my great-grandmother, Elizabeth, who I feel she died at like a year after I was born. Okay. But I feel like her presence has always been with me, guiding me, opening doors for me in ways that I might not be able to see, but which I can feel and understand. My father always told me that if she had basically grown up with resources and opportunities. She grew up a poor woman in Katy, Texas. She would have loved to have lived the life that I'm living, getting to be educated, go to school, travel the world. So basically, I wrote this in dedication to her and all of the influence she's had on me, despite her not being physically present.
That's amazing. That's really amazing.
And also reflecting on how my self-image and my inner strength and my confidence is not isolated from the women who come before me, you know. Everything that they fought for in their life opened doors for me. So.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at a chapter here that is therapy dedicated to your brother who went through therapy for about 6 months at the hospital. He survived it. Tell us a bit about this. And I have 2 more chapters I want us to talk about. And I'll give you read for us 1 or 2 parts. Yeah.
So Therapy is one of those poems that I wrote in a really dark time, trying to understand and grapple with just like hardship. My brother was hospitalized by gun violence in September of 2019, my last year of undergrad. And I actually had to leave school for some time when that happened and really like just be with myself and process.
Yeah.
But I figured I would write this poem as a way of like dealing with all of the distress and anger that I felt towards the American system, like as a whole, and how basically, despite of constant like systemic oppression and guided misfortune, I feel like, which has been inflicted on Black bodies in urban spaces in the U.S. Especially. Trying to contend with all the anger that I feel towards that and how Black people shine and are, like the last line is, in sunshine, Black boys turn gold too. Basically how even in darkness and in times where we feel invisible, there is still an inner light that shines from within.
That's quite interesting. You know, sometimes when I read about American history or listen to people's personal stories and so on, just like what you said here, it resonates a lot to being a Black migrant or a refugee that is trying to find their space in the German system, society, diversity, or whatever, not you want to call it. Like, that's quite interesting. And in America, I think instead of talking more about refugee issues, it's more of like Blackness, Afrocentric, and so on. So this is quite interesting, right?
It's interesting because issues around Blackness and issues around migration are seen as separate issues in the US, whereas here they're seen as one and the same.
Exactly.
Migration is seen as a more Latin and indigenous issue, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because America is a settler, colonial state.
Yeah, exactly. So, exactly.
The way we talk about migration is different.
That's a total different topic. But all of this actually led us to one of the chapters you wrote here that is quite interesting, Love Unwinding. And I will just read 1 or 2, 3 lines. It says, "This world doesn't offer people like us direct paths, twists, turns, and roundabouts ensure that the journey will be forever changing, that nothing will ever be familiar between us. The uncertainty of your next court date, a letter from the Bundestag declaring you may no longer seek asylum, A knock on the door from the German ICE. Our love is forever two roads unwinding, both constantly altering paths and directions. Sometimes in clear view of each other, often not. Our love is a collage of images, good and bad. Time with you is spent in reflections. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
We just talk about migration, blackness,
Yes.
Afrocentric, whiteness, asylum, and here is a poem that you really do unwinding. What inspired you? You have zero background about refugee issues, about asylum. You're just an immigrant who came for studies and eventually stayed, but still you decided to put something here that resonates a lot to the audience.
It's not based on my personal experience.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying you have zero experience on this. How does this come about?
Well, it's the people who I've been in relations with in Berlin. So basically, over the course of like my years here, I've been able to develop really strong, deep bonds with people who immigrated here in completely different circumstances.
Yeah.
Who came seeking asylum, seeking to make their lives and their families' lives better back home. And I was thinking about how the difference in our like migration backgrounds, in our particular cultural and historic, our cultures and environments either bring us together or pull us apart as Black people, you know? So Love Unwinding is about two people on different paths, two Black people on different paths, migration, on different migration paths, basically.
Yeah. That's quite
whose paths come together, but are also like forced apart due to the systemic nature of violence within the migration system.
That means the system actually classes them as well. At some point, if you look at it, they might somehow intertwine. I mean, class because of these are two people of one generic, call it if you want, Blackness, but the system separates them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's what the poem's about.
That's what the poem is all about. And then I've given you the book because it's also somehow resonate to this chapter where you talk about Southern tongue, right? Where does your accent comes from?
Yeah, that's also a connection with...
Would you want to read a part for us? And then we have like 10 minutes to go. So, and we have to read 2 more poems. Yeah.
All right. Southern tongues. Where does your accent come from? They always stand corrected. My dialect, you mean? 'Cause how dare you water me down into a subcategory? My tongue stands alone, independent of the language my colonizers roped me in. When I let my tongue hang, it hang. The weight of the past 5 centuries swinging in my throat like a pendulum. My voice carries the force of 1,000 ancestors. Every note, a call to home, a message to the past versions of myself. From coasts to islands to Mississippis, I carry 300 years of slavery and 400 years of genocide in my voice. It's not something that can be learned or appropriated, only inherited. It is my birthright, paid for and sacrificed for with the blood of my ancestors. Screams hollering out for battle, cries for liberation, rhythms of war, wrapped in the dips of my tongue. I told myself I would be more successful if I hid it. Keep the uhs and a's tucked in, deep where no one can see or hear what you truly are. A descendant of enslaved people stammering for the words to their mother tongues. Swahili, Fulani, Wolof, Igbo, Dinka. Tribes broken down, generations removed, families torn apart, words replaced by sounds, sounds trying hard to mimic the foreign land which used to be home. Drum beats, teeth clack. The water rushing along the shores of West Africa. The sparking of a fire, calling my brothers and sisters to dance. This voice is all the memory we have left.
You've actually mentioned of West Africa. What draws you to West Africa? I mean, you've mentioned almost all the tribe languages comes from West Africa, and mainly we think there are sub-region of Gambia, Senegal, Guinea, and so on, Fulani, Mandinka, Wolof, and so on. What draws you to?
Well, most of us, U.S. Americans, majority.
Because of the slave trade, right?
Yeah.
Especially from Gambia.
Yes, a lot of us have Gambian heritage. A lot of us.
Have you been to Gambia?
Don't know that. Soon. I'm planning a trip to Senegal, and hopefully I will be able to come through Gambia while I'm there in May.
Oh, you should. Do you know about Kunta Kinte?
Of course. I've seen Roots. It's required watching for all African Americans.
Kunta Kinte is Gambian, right?
Yes.
And it's quite interesting, right? And all that. Okay, so this is amazing. Guys, you see how best she reads the poem? Like, mine is just awful, the way I read it. Oh my God.
You can read one as well if you want.
No, I did already, but you read it best. So I'll allow you to read it, not for me. So this also comes down to Afrofuturistic mind. Of course, we're talking about Afrocentric, multidisciplinary art. Talk to us about this poetry. And no, before that, you were talking about what draws you to West Africa, to this point.
Oh, yes. Well, my ancestors are West African. I think you can see it in my face, definitely.
Of course.
You can see it in a lot of our faces, in our features as African Americans. And it's in our culture, too. A lot of people don't know Southern African American cuisine and West African cuisine are extremely similar. Like the idea of frying vegetables in tomato sauce, including okra in stews. Our ancestors brought okra to North America.
Yeah.
Okra is a part of American cuisine because of Black people.
Yeah.
There are so many Africanisms, West Africanisms, that have persisted as African American culture has evolved into something new, but still remains rooted in our roots, but still originates with our roots in West Africa.
Amazing.
So I'm always gonna pay homage to my ancestors and where the origins of my identity as African American come from.
Wow, this is amazing. I look forward to this trip to Gambia.
Yes, it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be me and my ancestors reconnecting.
Amazing.
No one in my family actually has ever been to Africa as well.
They should.
So I'll be the first person.
Especially to West Africa. Oh, this is amazing. So we have 5 minutes before we go. We're gonna you're gonna read us a poem from Afrofuturistic mind. Yes. Just read maybe one of the first 2-3 lines because we don't have much time, and then we conclude it from there.
All right.
Yeah, and then you will talk to us.
The poem's not that long. I could just read it.
Okay, I mean, if you can do that in a minute.
A solid minute, yeah.
Yeah, in a minute is good.
I'll go fast.
Yeah.
Afrofuturistic mind, F. It's the culture that gave you jazz. It's the culture that gave you blues. It's the culture that gave you hip hop, a culture that helped build movements of resistance and revolution and rebellion, the one that gave you the Black and proud generation, the young gifted and Black generation, the Black is beautiful generation, the Black Lives Matter generation, the one that gave you the hashtags and TikTok trends, say her name, Me Too, Oscar so white, down with Trump. We have fought, we have bled, we have cried. We have sweat bullets and set cities and plantations aflame with words and weapons alike. Ballads like strange fruit, proverbs like fuck the police, music for disrupting the peace. I want to say it's gotten us somewhere. I want to declare victory and say the war has been won and it's time to go home now. I want to say I know how it feels to be free and it's time to go home now and sing. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty we're free at last. And dance and ride off into the sunset and declare it's time to go home now. Then the cold reality sets in. The curtain closes, the spotlight darkens, and I go backstage to my dressing room. I wash off my mask disguised as war paint. I remove my costume disguised as armor, and I realize this place will never be home. A stranger in a foreign land, Bob Marley calls me a Buffalo Soldier. Truth is, we ain't no soldiers. Truth is, we ain't signed up for no war. The war chose us. We're the civilians that got randomly chose as casualties. No matter how many Kendrick Lamar songs hit the top 40 list, no matter how many Black Panther anthems reach the Billboard charts, no matter how many Hollywood biopics about Billie Holiday and NWA and the like get produced, no matter how many of our stories make it to the Broadway stage and the New York Times bestsellers list, the question remains, where? Where do we go from here?
Wow. Where do we go from here? And then we landed up here, actually, as your next project that you co-publish. So you have like 2 poems in this.
I'm not a co-publisher. I'm featured.
You're featured. Okay, thanks for that. You're featured here. It's called Parabolis Virtualist. Neue Quelle Relic. Herausgebenden von Noah Anderson and Calvin Jung. Yes. So you have 2 poetries here. One, Therapy, that we've already talked about, and the other one is Fette Menschen in einer Kultur, die Fette hast. So I'll just read 3 to 4 lines here, and you talk about this, and then we conclude from there because we just have 2 minutes. And it reads, Ihre Rückenrohre sind fett und schokoladig bis auf die Knochen weich. Ihre Schenken berühren sich, wenn sie geht, weich. Ihre Beine knicken am Knochenstat an der Hüfte ein. Ihre Titten versperren ihr die Sicht auf ihren Bauch. Ihre Finger passen nicht in seinem Verlobungsring. So you're talking about this fat gal.
Thank you, Kevin, for translating that for me. I did not translate that on my own. It was originally written in English, which is in the book.
Of course, and it's just amazing. I didn't read everything, so I think you can get the book to read it. So talk to us about this a bit. Yes. How did you got featured
how that poem came?
And how is it like trying to get into the German poetry scene as well? Because, I mean, of course, it's translated, but somehow if you want to live in Berlin, I'm sure you would want to get as well involved into this space. Yeah. How is it like finding a German space as well? Do you find one through this?
Yeah, so this is my first time my words have been translated and printed in German. I look forward to learning more, getting more knowledgeable in the language, writing original poems in German. One of the things that draws me to this country is the complexity of the language, which surprises a lot of people, but I find German really poetic and interesting as a language. And yeah, I'm really grateful for Noah and Kevin for giving me this shot to like be featured with so many great Afro-German poets in this queer poet anthology. I definitely hope that this opens more doors. If you're in the German literature scene, feel free to hit me up. But I will say Berlin's literature scene is incredibly diverse, and there are publications being premiering here that are in English, Arabic, Spanish, Italian, and that's part of what makes the Berlin literature scene so amazing.
So amazing, and it has been an amazing 60 minutes with you. It has been an amazing time having you, an amazing talent, and a multidisciplinary talent. Artists of all genres, like so many different talents, all combined in one. And this is amazing how good you do in all of this. Thank you for reading these beautiful poems for us. Thank you for doing this live performance for us. It has been amazing having you. That's all we have for you on Unfiltered Bantaba podcasts with my amazing, talented guest, Savanna Morgan, originally from the US, now based in Berlin. My name is Nyima Jadama. Until I come your way next. It's great having you. Join us next time for another interesting chat with another amazing talent. Like I said, we talk to people, talents, organizations, and projects worldwide, trying to bring out the unnoticed stuff that the media wouldn't talk about. Ciao.